Thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you for running and giving me a choice. I really appreciate it. I hear a lot from conservative politicians for a long, long time about limiting government, but based on asking them questions, I'm not only convinced they're not interested in that, I'm not really convinced they know what that means. So if you would please give me a brief description of what it means to limit government, I would appreciate it.
You bet. Maybe the best way to describe my view of government is to have you think about a play that came out, I don't know how many years ago, a movie also. It's called Little Shop of Horrors. For me, government is that plant. Okay? Feed me, Seymour! And the feed me is money. And the more money you give it, the more it grows. And if you can possibly reduce that flow, then you will reduce the size and scope of government. That's it. That's the equation. Now, saying how to do that, let me tell you. One of the reasons why you say, well, but you know, haven't we seen cuts in government all this time in the last few years? We all talk about the cuts, the horrible cuts, the horrible cuts. No. And then how could a government grow? I'll tell you how. Because we're never talking about cuts in government. We're talking about cuts in the rate of growth. Right? So that if you're planning in your family to have 10% more next year, because whatever that's what you were planning on. You know, you thought, I'm going to need that 10% more next year. And then, you know, you come home from work and you say, guess what? We don't get a raise this year, and so we can't get 10% more. And you say, well, we only get 5%. You say, well, we just had a cut in our standard of living. No, you had a cut in the rate of growth. That's what has happened in government over and over again. This next year, some interesting things are going to occur. Regardless of who's governor, things are going to happen that will force a lot of decisions. $800 million in stimulus funds probably won't be here. Good riddance.
Right.
All stimulus funds have ever done is they're like a siren song. You know, they pull you in to the reef where it's very rocky going, because then you have to put up you have to actually start doing these programs, and then the stimulus money goes away and it's all yours, and you're stuck with programs to say to people, sorry, we're going to take that away. Oh, no, you're not, because once you build a constituency, it is almost impossible to take it away until the money is gone. When the money goes, it will force. Absolutely. Again, I don't care who's governor. It will force them to take some hard decisions. And either you will figure out a way to raise taxes, or you'll figure out a way to reduce government. And that's when you are confronted with that, when every agency, and the first thing we will do, here's like day one, right? You say, you sign this little thing, repealing the governor's executive order that unionized the entire workforce. That's it. Number one, boom. Number two, you bring in every one of the heads of every one of the agencies in the state of Colorado that govern, and you say, you guys, you have 2 weeks to come back to this table with a plan to cut your department by 10%. Every single one of them. Now, I don't care what you do. You run it. I'm not telling you which things have to go and which things have to stay. I'm just telling you, you come back with that mark. Okay? Because if you don't, we'll make the cut for you. And you won't like it. So you're going to have to go back to your department heads, go through this process. Now, you know what, you guys? I've done that. I ran the U.S. Department of Education's regional office. It was headquartered here in Denver, 6-state region. When I went there, we had 222 people employed there. Some of them were working there. And it took us 4 years. My task, I was told, was to condense that, shrink it, maybe make it go to zero. Okay, I'm on board, Mr. President, Ronald Reagan. And so I said I had 22 people on my staff. My personal staff was 22. When I left there, it was 2. We had reduced it from the entire workforce went from 222 to 60. Now, I cannot take credit for all of that because some of it was a result of changes that were made, moving one division out and some stuff like that. But we went from 222 to 60. And I always made a speech and said, you know, we've reduced 80% of our staff here. Has anybody been able to tell the difference? No one has ever said, oh, yeah, the service from the regional office just went to hell. You know? No. And if we went to 0, nobody would have ever known. Absolutely not. I assure you, nobody would have known. Now, the president, what started that, is that the president came in to this is President Reagan, came into the cabinet and said to them, 10%, excuse me, this is 10% reduction. Every single agency of the federal government, take 10%, come back and tell us. Oh, whaling, gnashing of teeth, end of civilization. The buildings will fall, blood in the street. All the people will be loose to commit crime. Well, guess what? Didn't happen, and we got 10%. It was great. It was wonderful. Did it. Next year, he said, take another 10. And we did it. It can happen. It will happen. We will reduce the size and scope of government if I am the governor of this state, and I make this promise to you.
Well, you were back there. Way back.
Do we know how many programs in the state have been tagged by the stimulus money that can't go below this number?
Oh no, it's all over the place. I mean, $800 million, it went into a whole bunch of things. But I will tell you, if we just do the one thing I suggested about para, I don't know why it starts to stop right here. Para. If we change para from a system that is one that is, the determination is made by how much you actually contribute as opposed to what you get on the other side. Yeah. You know, changing that one thing. Now, it won't affect teachers today. It won't affect anybody that's presently in the system. But any new hiree will have to will be on a new system, and it will not be a guaranteed return. It will be a guaranteed contribution. Now, when you do that, you will save. There's two things. You have to do that, and you have to actually freeze COLAs for 7 years so you can kind of fill up the pot at the end so you can make this transition. Okay? Between it's called defined benefit versus defined contribution. Okay, that's the actual term. And that's what we essentially need to do even with Social Security. But we have to do this with para. We cannot continue down this path. It's absolutely impossible, not sustainable. Between $30 and $40 billion unfunded liability at the end of this thing, that will suck every single dollar out of the general fund over a very short period. It's already doing its job. The legislature was supposed to have attacked this last time, but they did some really dramatic things. They went from 55 years old to retire to 58 as the minimum. Well, it's not going to cut it, you guys. It won't happen. But that alone, doing that, that's $400 million a year in savings. If you roll back the Medicaid expansion, this did not come about because of any federal demand, just became, the legislature taking grants, usually from foundations around Colorado, going, here, use this, free money, add this to Medicare, add this to a Medicare treatment. Change that, unwind that. Those things can be eliminated. And then you do one other thing. You change Medicaid. Did I say Medicaid? This is Medicaid we're talking about here. You change that from a system that simply pays the provider. Provider sends a bill, somebody pays it. You change that entire dynamic and you turn it into an HSA.